Hey guys, so today I kind of want to talk about narcissism and the red pill community. There's this interesting change in dynamic to what these kind of philosophy memes of the red pill community kind of represent for a lot of young men and what these guys are trying to teach young men with regards to masculinity. And it's interesting because it seems to be getting more narcissistic. You'd usually think that the red pill community would advocate, masculinity in the sense of, not being hedonistic, fulfilling all your pleasures, doing these kind of base level consumeristic things, and instead, wanting to, build a nuclear family with, a potential wife, or to, advocate traditional values in terms of politics and all this type of stuff. But it seems to be developing in a different direction now, which I've been noticing, with certain red pill community kind of YouTube individuals. And it's more towards now a kind of lifestyle of narcissism that isn't based on traditional values or the nuclear family or anything like this. And Andrew Tate is a good example of this. So for example, he advocates something like a male polygamy. I think it's male polygamy. And this is basically the advocation of sleeping with multiple different women on the go whenever you like. Or maybe having multiple wives on the go whenever you like, and all this type of stuff. But never really settling down with one single woman. And this is something he kind of advocates, as I've heard in some of the interviews. Now, there's a lot of things I agree with what he says. I agree with most of the things he talks about when it comes to the financial situation, when it comes to situations of, the enslavement of mankind in the West, with regards to, keeping people under control, all of this type of stuff, or even with regards to many aspects of the philosophy that he lives up to and, has ingrained into his own life and stuff like this. But there is this massive element of him and a few others that I can think of, I can't remember the exact names of, that kind of represent the kind of demise of our modern age, which is this kind of fundamental narcissism. Now, of course, right now we're living in a very narcissistic age. And, simply going to a shopping mall is a very good illustration and example of what that means. This idea that you're not good enough, which psychologically encapsulates you into this idea of the ego and the persona, and of always chasing material value and status to accomplish a state of mind which is never accomplishable. This kind of thing where you're always chasing this process of material gain and things that have got to do with your physicality or your status or any of this type of stuff. And the reason why I bring this up is interesting because hypothetically, if we're going to think about a society which is heading more towards narcissism, then what would that look like? I would say that there would be an increase in polygyny, or relationships that were polyamorous, or where people are having multiple relationships with other people. And the reason why I think this is because the narcissist doesn't really care fundamentally on a compassionate level about the other individual in which they're interacting with. And this is the law of mutual relation. It kind of destroys itself when we're in a narcissistic culture, because people are not really talking to other people because they're emotionally invested in that individual, or emotionally invested on the same level, but rather talking to them or interacting with them, or simply just being around them because they can gain something from them. They can gain something that can be taken from them, that can fulfill them in some sense on a short-term basis, which lasts for only a certain amount of time. And polygyny, I would say, or that kind of sexual lifestyle, very much represents this narcissistic urge of attaining a short-term pleasure of instant gratification without really caring about who the individual is on a deeper level. And polygamy now is, I would presume, is most popular than ever, especially within open relationships in this modern day, as compared to other previous eras or previous times in history when it came down to kind of more monogamous relationships. And it's interesting because the thing that I would say fundamentally, and the problem with this, of course, is if this is the case, and love, can love truly be attained with multiple different partners? Because true love is the experience of not being interested in anyone else but that individual. It's a matrimony, it's this heaven on earth scenario emotionally, where you're in love with this other individual, with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend, with your wife, with your husband, where no one else matters but them, that you're in awe of them, that you are just fascinated by that individual. And therefore, can someone truly be in love in a polygamous relationship when you have multiple different individuals that you are dating? Or is it really the only reason for why someone does that is because they are narcissists? Now, the narcissist can't fall in love, I would say, because it wouldn't make any sense, would it? Because to fall in love is to have a beautiful sense of compassion with another individual where you are emotionally invested with each other. The narcissist cannot emotionally invest themselves into another person on a deep level. Therefore, can they fall in love? I don't think they can. I mean, how could they fall in love? How could the narcissist fall in love if this is the case? So you kind of, when you start thinking about these things, you get to a position in your mind where you start to think, oh, well, it's kind of interesting, it's kind of eerie, it's kind of strange, that if that's the case, then polygamy, or the promotion of polygamy in these red pill communities, which you'd think would promote traditionalism and monogamous relationships, are actually doing the opposite. And it's interesting because a lot of the red pill community also say that, well, feminism is the thing which is destroying the nuclear family, right? But then certain parts of the red pill community are advocating for this kind of relationship type for younger men to advocate and admire, which also destroys the nuclear family and the idea of being a father or a responsible father, or to even want to attain to be a father in the later stages of life. So this is something also that it's advocating in a paradoxical way, so it's very much possibly doing the same thing. And in that sense, you could say that it's an advocation for the production of narcissists in our modern culture, in society today, which is very worrying. And this is another thing which I find very fascinating about love and about the human condition and about the divinity of man in the greatest landscape of existence, is that man is obviously, and mankind, humans, are obviously different from animals. We're obviously different in that sense, in the way that love makes us different, the ability to fall in love and have, you could say, that process itself of falling in love and being in love and having love for that other individual is something in which is divinely given to us by God. If we're going to go back to biblical scripture, or if we're going to go back to the religious spiritual perspective. Because we're not just animals, we're not just biological creatures, we're obviously a lot different from biological creatures because we've built civilizations. We're very much different. We're very much more profound in that sense than just normal animals that shag each other on the street or in nature. It's very much fundamentally different. And the existence of love and matrimony and union of the opposites between two individuals makes that very clear to me in my perspective. And to take that away, or to take that away itself, strips back the civilizations in which we have built. A lot of the civilizations in which we've built have been based on this idea of matrimony between the opposites to create a nuclear family, to create the family structure. And then by doing that, we create a support system of a shared value, which is in itself ingrained within the idea of compassion and empathy, which then allows us to build civilizations in which we now exist in. But the narcissist, if we are to breed narcissists, then the only thing in which narcissists can relate on is the element of being a narcissist. And therefore, if that exists, or if that is maintained and promoted, then the idea of even civilization and the shared value structure in which it was built on is not only changed, but also to not act as a supporting structure for people in society and in communities. This is why religion was so powerful. The idea of matrimony, union, compassion, empathy. But the narcissist doesn't experience compassion or empathy in that sense for the other, or for the potential partner in which he may be in or she may be in. Well, you've got to think about that. If the individual who is always seeking polygamy or is in that relationship structure with other individuals, can they truly fall in love? And people say, yes, you can fall in love with multiple different people for their different attributes. One individual may hold these different attributes compared to this other woman in which you may be dating or may be attracted to. But truly, true love, I think, my personal opinion, can only be really attained between two people. And this idea or this promotion of this kind of narcissistic lifestyle on a sexual level is only going to proliferate the amount of narcissism within our society today. Because it is very negative, I would say. I'd say the situation in which we are in today when it comes to consumerism, when it comes to egocentric thinking, the existence of the persona, the inability to be vulnerable, the lack of empathy and compassion in which other people have for other people in general, the chasing of career and status, all of these things is very much not cohesive to a society which deems other people on a same shared value, which is of compassion and empathy. There seems to be a lack in that, or a lack in general. And you also have to ask the question of, even the act of polygamy itself is a self-evident example of something that isn't satisfactory for the individual who is constantly pertaining in that lifestyle, because the abyss of pleasure is a displeasure, is a consistent hole which keeps dropping down, and it can never be filled. Thus, the chasing of polygamy and sexual relationships, because you're not truly relating if there's no sense of mutual relation, if it's only a grasping and attainment of lust and self-gratification. This consistent process is obviously not something that is going to allow the building of another civilization. It's just because where the family's going to come from, how a family's going to be built, who's going to look after the families, because if the mental mind of the individual of innocence today is perverted towards a narcissistic tendency, then how is there ever going to be a form of compassion or an understanding of compassion or a feeling of love for another individual, for your child, for your partner, for any of these things? So that's my fundamental question. And I want you guys to maybe put your comments down below. I mean, what are your experiences with these types of things? What do you think, in your opinion? How do you feel about this type of stuff? And especially the advocates of these, you could say, movements or kind of orientations, like Andrew Tate or some of these other I like Andrew Tate to a large degree of some of the things he says. I think a lot of what he says is very valid. But this obsession with material gain can only be so satisfactory. And the continuous obsession of, because he's a brilliant marketer, he's a brilliant businessman, because he's obviously a persona, he's playing up to a persona in which he exists in online, and you don't obviously see the whole reality of who he is online. But the way he brands himself is very effective. Because he is directing himself towards this audience, which are seeking some sort of help when it comes to a financial crisis or the potential happenings of a financial crisis in the future and all of these types of things. But ultimately, the question of narcissism is very fundamental within our culture, and people who want to emulate this man from the persona in which he shows is obviously something very fundamentally unhealthy. So put your questions down below, talk about this in the comments section, tell me what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Thanks. Hey guys, so just a quick update on My Rome Society. We have sold out on over 50% of the seats, so if you still want to get involved, book in a free consultation call with me down below. I'll run you down with what it is all about, or me or one of my colleagues will do so, and we can see if you are a perfect fit to the program. So I look forward to talking to you, and I'll see you on the inside.